Hello Americans, welcome to the shop. It's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher, and this is number 7 in my series of anecdotes. And in fact, it's number 2 in my trifecta of river adventures when I was young. So a couple months ago I talked about Rub-a-Dub-Dub, 3 boys in a tub, and that's when we had our little boat and we launched it in the cesspool of the Illinois River and all of that. But I was only about 11 or 12 years old at the time. Well, now this adventure starts when I'm in college. I think I'm about 21 years old at the time, the last year of college, and I decided it was time for some more excitement and adventure. So in this 2-part video series, I'm going to talk about a raft trip. And I made a model of the raft, so I'm going to talk later on how I constructed that. This whole insane idea was mine and mine alone, and then at the last minute I had 3 other guys that decided they'd go along with me after I had done all of the work. But that being aside, I want to show you on a map the itinerary of the trip. And in fact, at that time, we didn't have any river charts or anything like that. We just used an Illinois road map, and I guess it didn't really matter anyway because we're going downstream with the current as far as we can go in 4 days. So that was, maybe it was 5 days. There are no pictures, although one of my friends, Dick, did take pictures, but he lives in southern Illinois, and I doubt that he has the pictures anymore, but there wouldn't be very many like we do with an iPhone now. So this is going to be mainly a verbal account of what took place, but we are going to drive over to Peru here on a little field trip, and I'll show you where I started in the old home place there, my mom's house. That's where I built the raft in the backyard and then took it apart and transported it down to the river, reassembled it, and then the next day the adventure started. So let's take a look at the map. But first let me tell you what inspired this trip. When we were children, my mother would read us Bible stories, but my dad would read books to us. Remember, this is long before television. And my dad started out by reading Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn to us, and of course, there is a raft trip on the Mississippi River with Huck Finn. And then also from comic books, there was a Little Lulu and Tubby comic book where they built a raft. That was one of my inspirations, believe it or not, a comic book? Yeah. Also, Dad read Robinson Crusoe, Swiss Family Robinson, and then later on, he told me to read Thor Heydale's book, Kon-Tiki, and then later The Ra. So all of this stuff interested me in a raft. And in fact, we made a lot of little rafts when we were boys in creeks and things like that, out of logs, and that doesn't work at all. It sounds romantic, but you really can't build a decent raft with logs. It has to be pontoons or something of that nature. So my raft, when I'll show you how I built it here pretty soon, was done with lumber and with oil barrels, so that it had pretty good flotation. Well, now let's go take a look at the map, truly. Well, I'm sitting here in front of a big map of Illinois. It's not a road map, it's an earth science map that I picked up at a school auction, but so there's no highway shown here at all, counties and things like that. But here is the Illinois River, and so I'm going to show you here where we started and where we ended. The Illinois River is over 300 miles long, and in fact it begins right about here where the Kankakee and the Des Plaines River come together. So this is the source right here, and by the time it gets to La Salle, Peru, where we started the raft trip, we've got about 50 miles of river here, probably at the very most. So we launched the raft at this point, and of course we're going downstream with the current, and the distance was strictly how far we could go in 4 or 5 days. And we ended up here at Browning, Illinois. It's just a wide spot in the river, and that's when we ran out of time and money and food and all of that, and had to get back to college, and I'll talk more about how we got home later on. Needless to say, this was a one-way trip. We're not going upstream with a raft and a 9-horse motor. So continuing, if we had continued, the river follows this path and enters the Mississippi River at Grafton, Illinois. We did not go that far on the raft. We did go that far on the boat trip, which is number 3 of the trifecta. I did not have charts of the Illinois waterway when we made the trip. In fact, I did not know such a thing existed. As I said, we used an Illinois road map, and I just picked this up very recently for $10 at an estate sale specifically for this video. I thought I'd show you the source of the Illinois again. So here's the Kankakee River joining the Des Plaines River, and then it becomes the Illinois River. Here's a detailed map of the river going through La Salle, Peru. You remember me talking about Brewery Hill when we came down that and went along here up to this point right here, and that's where we launched the Rub-a-Dub-Dub in the last video. But in this video, we're going to launch the raft right here on the south side of the river. So by then, the bridge had been built, and we followed the road and came clear across here and down. This is 251. Across here over the slough and to the edge of the river. At one time there was a bridge here, a wooden turnstile type bridge that was torn down in the very early 50s. I do remember it, and I'll have some pictures of that later on, and I'll show you these points here when we take the field trip over to Peru. Okay, now we're going to get into the car and drive over to Peru. That's 25 miles, and I'll show you the details of where the raft was built and how I got it down to the river. Then we'll come back here and talk about the building of the raft and all of the details. Again, there's no picture, so it's just going to be strictly a narrative. Okay, I am now in Peru, Illinois, and I'm going down a very steep hill here. It's Putnam Street, actually. And the reason I'm going down here right now, and they're working on the road, is that I just want to show you where the launch site for the raft was from this side of the river, where there's a good view. So at one time, this was a rather important road, and there was a bridge at the bottom of the hill here. And you will see the abutments for that bridge across the river. So there's the river. See that yellow barrier there at the end? You'll see it better in a minute, but about 10 years ago, a carload of teenagers went down here. I don't know if they lost their brakes or were drinking or what, but they went right into the river. Several were killed, and then they put that barrier up. So this is Water Street. You've seen this before in my videos, and most of the buildings are torn down. There was a zinc plant here, and there's the new bridge, of course. Now there's so much brush that has grown up around the river that you really can't see, but this was the exact path of the old turnstile wooden bridge, and I will have pictures of that bridge to show you here presently. So I'm going to park over here by the van. Oh, maybe over here. We'll have a better view. This was a horse trough here. Now it's a flower pot. Okay, I'm out of the car. Let me cross the tracks here, and you can see across the river. This is the Illinois River. And there was a bridge here, and that's the old bridge abutment over there. And of course there was a bridge tender's house there as well, because the bridge had to be manually, I mean with manpower, turned. It was a turnstile bridge with a huge key. I'll show you a picture of the bridge in a minute, along with the key, which is in a museum around here. So we launched the boat just to the right hand, which is to the west of that abutment, where you see a bit of a bare spot there on a beach where those people are fishing, actually. That is where I built the raft, assembled it, I should say, and we launched it from that point. And over on the other side, these boat launches here, there's a couple of them, were not there at that time, not in the mid-60s. As you can see, there is no beach or any way we could have launched the raft from this side of the river. That's why we were on the other side, and now there's a bunch of trees that have grown up along here. You can see how steep that hill is. That's not Brewery Hill, which I talk about sometimes also. And this building here was a warehouse when I worked at the hardware store, and we kept guttering and washing machines and things like that in there, right in that corner door. It was very decrepit even in 1961. Okay, this is where it all began. This is my old homestead. That's my brother's bedroom up there in the dormer off to the left, facing the west. But anyway, see the white garage there that my dad built many years ago? It's pretty dilapidated now, but I completely put the raft together, temporarily that is, in the backyard. You can't see the backyard, but it would be just to the right-hand side of that white garage. I totally built it and assembled it and numbered all of the pieces of wood and all of the components so that it could be trucked down to the river and reassembled. So what I'm going to do now, and I'll speed this up, I'm just going to head down to the river. I have to cross the Green Bridge, of course. So that's about 3 or 4 miles from here. You don't have to watch this, and I'll speed up the footage by 6 or 8 times so it's more bearable. Every house, every building around here has a story from my childhood. I still remember everyone's name, but I will not bore you with that. But it means a lot to me. Okay, we're on 4th Street, which is also Route 6. Very important road before they built Route 80, 4 miles north of here. A lot of construction going on. Okay, we're in downtown Peru, and I'm going to shoot the camera over here where it says Cross Bridge, and that is where my granddaughter Sophia was married just 3 days ago, and this is June of 2024. And that was the hardware store there where I worked for 5 years. Okay, now we're on Route 251. It used to be 51 till they built Route 39. We're crossing the river. I remember when this bridge was built. Perhaps you can see here off to the side where we're going. Anyway, they built this bridge in 1960, and my dad took the whole class down to watch raising the middle section off of the barge. It was quite amazing. Okay, this is the old Slough Bridge. I have a story about this bridge, but I can never tell it. So this was the slough, or still is. We used to ice skate down here and even drove the 53 Ford across the ice. We kind of were afraid we were going to crack through, but we didn't. So this was part of the highway when that wooden bridge was still in place. But now it's just a local road to get down to the river. Launch boats, go fishing. And this area in here was the city dump for many years when I was a teenager. And we would come over here and hunt rats with our 22s. Never killed that many rats in my entire life. We ran out of ammunition. I had to go back to town to buy more 22s. So all of this area here was a smoldering open city dump. Here. Now, as you look across the river, you will see the flag painted over there on that retaining wall. And that's where I was a few minutes ago. No fishing? Are you serious? So there's the bridge abutment, what's left of it. Still in pretty good shape, actually, but there's nothing to see on the other side of the river. We used to swim across the river here when we were teenagers. Now they've changed the road here a bit, but I drove the truck right down here. I do not remember who owned the truck. I borrowed the truck from somebody, but I came down here as close as I could to the beach. There's a couple guys fishing right there, but right down here is where we put the barrels. I don't know how many loads or trips that it took, but right down here it's kind of a mess, but that's where I built the final raft. Nailed it, no screws, it was all just hammer and nail back then. So it took all four of us to push the raft off into the water, and this is where the journey began. And again, the current is flowing this way. So naturally that was the direction that we traveled. Well, it's 1 hour later and I'm back in the studio, and this really concludes the video. Part 1 anyway. Make sure you watch part 2 where I talk about the construction of the raft and how I assembled it and designed it and all of those things, as well as the details of the trip itself. Sorry, there are no pictures, so it's going to be strictly a verbal account. So join me in the very exciting adventure part 2.